When I first met Laura, she was the girl next door, literally. Her parents moved into the vacant house 2 doors down from mine the summer before my senior year of college. I remember the first time I saw her, carrying boxes from the U-Haul in cut-off denim shorts and a faded Rolling Stones t-shirt, her hair a wild mess of chestnut waves. She smiled and waved, and I, caught off guard, nearly tripped over the sprinkler in my yard trying to wave back. By the time I graduated, we were dating, and a year later, we were married. For the first few years, it was bliss. We were one of those annoyingly cute couples who held hands at the grocery store and finished each other's sentences. It wasn't until I started getting promoted at work, business trips, late nights, a phone that never stopped buzzing, that the cracks began to show. Laura didn't complain at first, just plastered on a smile whenever I called to say I'd be home late again. But I could see it in her eyes, the way they dimmed a little more each time. She quit her job as a paralegal after we moved into our new house, said she wanted to focus on making it a home. I understood, or at least I tried to. Maybe that's why I didn't see the signs. Or maybe I just didn't want to. It was a Wednesday when everything started to fall apart. I was 3 days into a week-long conference out of state, spending my lunch break scrolling through emails in my hotel room when my phone buzzed with a text from Laura. "Can we talk tonight?" Nothing else. No heart emojis, no miss you tagged at the end. Just that. My stomach did a weird flip, the kind it does when you know something's wrong but can't quite put your finger on it. I stared at the message, thumb hovering over the screen, trying to convince myself it wasn't anything to worry about. Maybe she wanted to talk about kitchen renovations again, or adopting a dog like she'd been hinting at for months. Sure. Call you after the keynote. I typed back. By the time I got out of the conference hall, it was nearly 10. I dialed her number as I walked back to my room, balancing my briefcase in one hand and a lukewarm coffee in the other. The phone rang twice before she picked up. "Hey," she said, voice soft. Too soft. I could barely hear her over the city noise outside. "Hey, you okay?" A pause. A shaky breath. "Yeah. I miss you, that's all." Relief flooded my chest, easing some of the tension coiled there. "I miss you too. Only 2 more days and I'll be home." "I know," she murmured. Never mind. It's stupid." "Laura," I pressed, kicking the door to my room open and tossing my briefcase on the bed. "Talk to me. It's just been lonely, you know? With you gone so much. I've barely left the house." Her voice cracked at the end, and my heart twisted painfully. "I'm sorry," I said, meaning it. "I know I've been busy, but things are slowing down soon, I promise." "I know," she said, but she didn't sound convinced. We stayed on the phone for another hour, talking about everything and nothing until she yawned, and I coaxed her to go to bed. After we hung up, I sat in the dark for a long time, phone still clutched in my hand, staring at the city lights outside the window and wondering when my life had started to feel like this, like I was a visitor in my own marriage. When I got home Friday night, the house was dark. I called out for Laura, but the only response was the low hum of the fridge and the ticking of the hallway clock. I dropped my bags by the door, loosened my tie, and wandered into the kitchen, frowning at the silence. A note was stuck to the fridge with a butterfly magnet, written in Laura's slanted handwriting. "Went to the store. Be back soon. Love you." I smiled a little at that, some of the knots in my chest unwinding. I grabbed a beer from the fridge and collapsed onto the couch, flicking through channels without really watching. Half an hour later, headlights swept across the living room curtains, and I heard the garage door creak open. "Hey, stranger," I called, getting up to meet her. But the smile froze on my face when the door swung open, and Laura stepped inside, cheeks flushed and hair tousled in a way that sent a chill racing down my spine. Her eyes widened when she saw me. "Oh, you're back early," she said, breathless. "Flight got in on time," I said slowly, eyes narrowing. "You okay?" Yeah, just lost track of time at the store," she said too quickly. Her hands twisted in the hem of her dress, a nervous habit she hadn't had since college. The first sliver of doubt slid under my skin, cold and sharp. I forced a smile, stepping forward to kiss her. Her lips were warm, but she tensed beneath my touch, barely kissing back. When I pulled away, she looked at me with eyes too bright, too guilty. "You sure you're okay?" I asked again, voice low. "Of course," she said, forcing a smile. "Just tired. I missed you." We ordered takeout and ate on the couch, making small talk about the conference and her week, but her laugh was brittle, her smile strained. I told myself I was imagining it, that I was paranoid after spending days alone in a hotel room with nothing but bad cable and room service. But later that night, as she slept with her back to me and the space between us stretched wide and cold, I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that something was very, very wrong. I spent most of Saturday convincing myself I was imagining things, that the distance I felt between us was just residual stress from work, that Laura's strained smiles were because she was tired or preoccupied. But by Sunday, even I couldn't keep pretending. She was jittery, couldn't hold eye contact for more than a few seconds, flinched when I reached for her hand during breakfast. I'd catch her staring out the window, eyes distant, thumb worrying the edge of her sleeve. "You okay?" I asked for what felt like the 100th time that weekend. She jumped, eyes snapping to mine. "Yeah, sorry," she said, forcing a laugh that sounded like glass cracking. "Just tired, I guess." "You've been tired a lot lately," I said, trying to keep my tone light. "I guess so," she mumbled, pushing eggs around her plate without eating. "I haven't been sleeping well." "Nightmares again?" I asked, frowning. She'd always had nightmares, ever since we started dating. Used to wake up gasping, eyes wide and unseeing, fingers clutching the sheets. Most nights, I'd hold her until her breathing steadied, whispering nonsense against her hair until she drifted back to sleep. But she shook her head. "No, just restless." I opened my mouth to press her, to ask if something had happened while I was away, but the doorbell rang, cutting me off. Laura was out of her seat before I could blink, napkin dropping to the floor in her rush. "I'll get it," she said, voice tight. I watched her hurry down the hall, heart pounding in my chest. There was a muffled exchange by the door, too low for me to catch, and then the door clicked shut again. Laura came back a minute later, face pale, hands trembling. "Who was it?" I asked, frowning. "Oh, just the neighbor's kid," she said, voice too bright. "Selling chocolates for a fundraiser." She flinched when I stood, eyes darting to the door. I moved past her, pulling the curtain back just in time to catch a flash of a car pulling away. My stomach twisted. "What neighbor's kid drives a car?" I asked, voice slow, careful. She faltered. "Oh, I meant his dad," she stammered, wringing her hands. "Must've, been dropping him off." I stared at her, mind racing, words slipping through my fingers. Laura didn't lie, not well, anyway. She was a terrible liar. But this was different. The way her eyes wouldn't settle on mine, how her foot tapped nervously against the tile, it was like watching a stranger in my wife's skin. "Right," I said slowly, forcing a smile. "Guess that makes sense." By Monday morning, the suspicion had burrowed so deep in my chest that I could barely breathe around it. I left for work early, pretending I had an early meeting, but circled the block twice before parking a few houses down. I told myself I was being stupid, paranoid, that I was going to feel like a complete asshole when Laura called to ask why I was late for lunch. But I stayed anyway, fingers drumming restlessly against the steering wheel, eyes fixed on the house. An hour passed. Then 2. I was about to give up, chalk it all up to exhaustion and an overactive imagination, when a black sedan pulled up to the curb. My breath caught in my throat as the passenger door opened, and Laura stepped out. She looked over her shoulder, biting her lip, before ducking back inside the car. A man leaned over from the driver's seat, dark-haired and lean, and Laura's face broke into a smile so bright it hurt to look at. They talked for a few minutes, too close, heads bent together, Laura's fingers playing with the ends of her hair. She leaned in, laughing at something he said, and my stomach lurched when his hand came up to cup her cheek, thumb brushing the corner of her mouth with a familiarity that left me cold. I watched, numb and nauseous, as Laura leaned in, eyes fluttering shut, and kissed him. I don't remember driving to work. I must have, because I found myself sitting in the parking lot an hour later, fingers white-knuckled around the steering wheel, breath coming too fast and too shallow. The image of Laura in another man's arms was burned into my eyelids, replaying every time I blinked. I thought about driving back home, throwing the door open, demanding an explanation. But my hands shook too bad to grip the wheel, and my head was too full of white noise to think straight. So I stayed in the parking lot, phone heavy in my pocket, thumb hovering over Laura's name, mind blank with shock and something dark and bitter that twisted low in my gut. I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to breathe past the jagged pain wedged between my ribs. When my phone buzzed in my hand, I nearly dropped it. Laura's name lit up the screen, and I stared at it for a long moment, heart pounding so loud I could barely hear. "Hey, just wanted to say I love you. Hope you're having a good day." I stared at the message until the words blurred together. Then I threw the phone into the passenger seat and gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles ached. That night, I watched Laura with a hollow ache in my chest, a wound too raw to touch. She laughed at all the right places during dinner, kissed me on the cheek when she passed me a beer, curled up beside me on the couch and rested her head on my shoulder. It was the same as always, the same routine, the same smiles, the same everything. Except now, all I could see were the lies hiding behind every smile, the guilt lingering in the way her eyes flickered away too quickly, the way her fingers trembled slightly when they brushed mine. When we went to bed, Laura pressed herself against me, lips soft and warm at the edge of my jaw. Her hand slid beneath my shirt, touch hesitant but familiar, but all I could feel was the ghost of someone else's hands on her skin. I turned away, heart twisting painfully when she deflated beside me, fingers curling around the hem of my shirt before she let go. "I love you," she whispered into the dark, voice small and uncertain. I didn't answer. I stared at the ceiling long after her breathing evened out, the ache in my chest growing with every quiet breath she took, every innocent flutter of her lashes, every soft exhale against my shoulder. And for the first time since we got married, I found myself wondering if I had ever really known the woman sleeping beside me at all. By Tuesday morning, the ache in my chest had hardened into something cold and sharp, a knife wedged between my ribs that twisted every time Laura smiled. I went through the motions, got dressed, kissed her cheek on my way out the door, forced a smile when she beamed and told me to have a good day. But the second I pulled out of the driveway, I dialed a number I hadn't called in years. It rang twice before a gruff voice answered. "Danny here." "It's me," I said, voice tight. "I need a favor." Danny was a buddy from college, worked in private security now, most of it legal, some of it less so. We'd been roommates sophomore year, stayed close even after he dropped out to join the Marines. He was the kind of guy who knew people, the kind who could make problems disappear if the price was right. He let out a low whistle when I finished explaining, and I could practically see the way his brows shot up. "Jesus, man. You sure about this?" "I need to know," I bit out, fingers clenching the steering wheel. "Can you help me or not?" A sigh crackled over the line. Yeah. Gimme a couple of days. I'll see what I can dig up." The waiting was the worst part. Every time my phone buzzed, my pulse spiked, breath catching in my throat until I saw it was just another work email or spam call. I buried myself in meetings, drowned in paperwork until my eyes burned and my head ached, but nothing dulled the jagged edge of dread twisting in my gut. By the time Thursday rolled around, I was half crazed with it, palms sweating every time Laura's name lit up my screen, every time she kissed me goodbye with eyes too bright and smile too wide. I was halfway through my second cup of coffee when my phone buzzed, and Danny's name flashed on the screen. My stomach lurched painfully, fingers trembling as I swiped to answer. "Yeah." A pause. A sigh. Then, "You might want to sit down for this." Danny's voice was a low rumble in my ear, steady but grim. "Name's Connor Lane," he said. 24, works part-time at his dad's auto shop. Lives a few blocks down from you." My blood ran cold. "The neighbor's kid," I breathed. "Yeah," Danny confirmed, voice tight. "Been seeing him a lot lately. Got security footage of her car parked outside his place 3 times this week alone. Cameras caught her leaving last night around 11. I squeezed my eyes shut, nausea rolling in waves. "Jesus." "It gets worse," Danny said, and I heard the hesitation in his voice, the kind of quiet warning that meant he was about to drop a bomb. "Kid's dad's a regular at Pete's Bar, same place you and I used to hit up back in the day. Recognized your wife right away. Said they'd been at it for months. The world tilted dangerously, vision swimming. My head throbbed, pulse roaring in my ears. "You're sure?" I rasped, voice cracking. "Got pictures," Danny said grimly. "You want me to send them?" For a long moment, I couldn't breathe, couldn't think past the crushing weight on my chest. Then, voice hollow, "Yeah. Send them." The pictures came through a few minutes later, blurry, time-stamped shots of Laura pressed against Connor's chest, lips locked, fingers tangled in his hair. Another of them climbing into his car, her hand on his thigh, eyes bright with laughter. But the one that shattered me, the one that left me staring at my phone with numb disbelief, was of Laura at our front door, Connor's arms around her waist, their lips inches apart. Time-stamped for the night I got back from the conference, barely 10 minutes before she walked inside and kissed me hello. My hand trembled so badly I nearly dropped the phone, while burning the back of my throat. I stumbled to the bathroom, barely making it to the sink before I was heaving, vision blurring with hot, stinging tears. I didn't remember driving home. One moment I was hunched over my desk, head in my hands, and the next I was standing on our front porch, key halfway in the lock, heart hammering so hard I thought it might burst. The house was dark, curtains drawn. Laura's car was parked in the driveway, but the lights were off, the kind of eerie silence that sent ice crawling down my spine. I pushed the door open, breath hitching painfully in my chest. "Laura?" I called, voice raw and shaking. Silence. Then, faintly, the sound of muffled voices upstairs. My stomach twisted, legs carrying me forward before I could stop them, footsteps heavy and slow. The door to our bedroom was cracked open, a sliver of light spilling into the hallway. I hesitated for a heartbeat, just long enough to hear a soft laugh, a low murmur. Then I shoved the door open, and the world tilted beneath my feet. Laura was sprawled on the bed, hair a wild mess, Connor's head buried against her neck. The sheets were a tangled mess, pillows thrown haphazardly to the floor. For a long moment, all I could do was stare, mind blank with disbelief and the kind of searing pain that left me gasping. What the Connor jerked back, eyes wide with shock, hands still fisted in the sheets. Laura shot upright, color draining from her face, eyes round and horrified. "Oh my God," she breathed, voice barely a whisper. Jake, it's not." "Not what?" I croaked, voice cracking. "Not what it looks like." "Really?" I wanted to shout, to break something, to drag that asshole out of my bed and beat him bloody. But my hands shook too bad to make fists, and my knees wobbled dangerously beneath me. "Get the fuck out," I bit out, voice a raw snarl. Connor scrambled to his feet, face pale, hands shaking as he grabbed for his clothes. Laura clutched the sheets to her chest, eyes glistening with tears, lips trembling. "Jake, please," she choked out, voice splintering. I can explain." "Explain what?" I snapped, voice sharp and brittle. "How you've been screwing the neighbor's kid while I'm busting my ass to pay for this house. Or how you've been lying to my face for months." She flinched, tears spilling over, but I couldn't bring myself to care. Rage boiled beneath my skin, bitter and scorching, drowning out the hurt. "Get out," I said again, voice flat and dead. "Both of you. Now." Laura's breath hitched, eyes wide and pleading, but I turned away, chest heaving, throat raw and burning. I barely heard the door click shut behind them, barely registered the echo of footsteps down the hall, mind hazy with betrayal and something darker, something that left my hands trembling and vision blurred. And when the house finally fell silent, I sank to the floor, head in my hands, and screamed until my throat was raw and bloody. I don't remember how long I sat on the floor, knees pulled to my chest, hands buried in my hair. Long enough for the room to blur around the edges, for my throat to burn raw and my eyes to ache from the tears I refused to shed. Long enough for the light outside the window to fade from gray to black, swallowing the house in darkness. When I finally moved, it was like pulling myself out of quicksand, limbs heavy and numb. My fingers trembled as I pushed to my feet, the silence so thick it felt suffocating. The sheets were still a twisted mess on the bed, smelling of sweat and Laura's vanilla perfume, the scent so painfully familiar I nearly crumbled. I ripped them off, every last one, and threw them in the hallway. The mattress looked bare and pathetic, and so did I, standing in the dark with my hands shaking and my heart shattered, eyes burning and throat raw. The house was empty, quiet in a way that made my chest ache, but I couldn't stay there, couldn't sit on that couch or walk those halls or stare at the family photos without picturing Connor's hands on her, his lips pressed to her neck. Without hearing her soft laughs and breathless whispers, the ones that were supposed to be mine. I stumbled outside, breath hitching in my chest, and collapsed into my car. The engine roared to life beneath my shaking hands, and I drove, eyes fixed on the dark road, vision blurred at the edges. I didn't know where I was going, didn't care, as long as it was away. An hour later, I found myself parked outside Danny's apartment. I wasn't sure how I got there, couldn't remember turning down his street, pulling into the lot. But the light was on in his kitchen, and the door swung open before I even knocked. Danny took one look at me, red-rimmed eyes, shaking hands, face pale and hollow, and his expression softened. "Jesus, Jake," he breathed, stepping aside. "Get in here." He handed me a glass of something dark and strong, and I downed it in one burning gulp, the heat scorching my throat and settling heavy in my gut. The couch dipped beneath his weight, and I scrubbed a hand over my face, breath shuddering. "She really did it," I rasped, voice cracking. "She fucking." "I know," Danny said softly, and the sympathy in his eyes nearly shattered me. "I'm sorry, man." The laugh that tore out of me was broken and bitter. "Yeah, well. Guess I should have seen it coming, huh?" "Bullshit," Danny snapped, eyes darkening. "This isn't on you." "Isn't it?" I bit out, voice rising. "I've been gone more than I've been home the past year. Half the time, I couldn't even remember the last time we had a real conversation. She was lonely, I left her lonely." "That doesn't justify what she did," Danny growled. "She could have talked to you, could have asked for counseling, hell, she could have left if she was that miserable. Cheating was a choice. Her choice." His words hit like a slap, harsh and blunt, and for a moment, all I could do was sit there, head in my hands, chest heaving. The truth hurt, stripped down and brutal, but I couldn't argue. Not when I'd seen the way Laura looked at Connor, bright-eyed and laughing, like he'd hummed the stars for her. God, it made me sick. I stayed on Danny's couch that night, sleep fitful and fractured, twisted with flashes of Laura's eyes, Laura's hands, Laura's lips on someone else. I woke at dawn, head pounding, mouth dry and sour with whiskey. Danny was already up, a mug of coffee in one hand and a grim look on his face. "Thought you might want this," he grunted, shoving the mug into my hands. I took it with a shaky nod, wrapping both hands around the warmth, fingers still trembling. "What the hell do I do now?" I rasped, voice raw. Danny's jaw ticked. "Depends. You want to try to fix this?" The laugh that tore out of me was jagged and broken. "There's nothing left to fix," I said, voice hollow. I can't even look at her without." The words choked off, leaving me gasping, the wound too raw to touch. Danny's eyes softened, and he clapped a hand to my shoulder, grip firm and grounding. "Then you get a lawyer," he said flatly. "And you make damn sure she doesn't screw you over twice." The next few days passed in a blur of paperwork and hushed phone calls, of meetings with divorce attorneys and empty, aching silences. I stayed at a motel off Route 9, the kind of place with flickering neon signs and lumpy mattresses that smelled faintly of mildew. It was a shithole, but at least it wasn't home. Home wasn't home anymore, not with her still there, her clothes in the closet, her perfume on the pillows, her betrayal clinging to every corner. I couldn't bring myself to call her, couldn't stomach the idea of hearing her voice, of listening to her stammer through apologies and excuses. So I let my lawyer handle it, numbly signing the papers, nodding along to half-understood explanations about assets and alimony and state fault laws. She called a few times, phone buzzing incessantly on the motel nightstand, her name flashing bright and mocking. I stared at it until it stopped, until the silence stretched long and heavy and my hands stopped shaking. I deleted every voicemail without listening. It was a week later, 3 days before our 5th anniversary, when I found myself parked outside the house again, heart pounding in my chest, fingers drumming restlessly against the steering wheel. The lights were on in the living room, curtains pulled back, and I could see Laura pacing, phone pressed to her ear, face pale and drawn. I shouldn't have been there, I knew that. But my hands moved of their own accord, keys twisting, door slamming shut behind me as I stalked up the driveway, heart pounding too loud in my ears. The door swung open before I could knock, Laura's eyes widening when she saw me, hope flaring so bright and raw it nearly knocked the breath from my lungs. Jake, she breathed, voice small and trembling. God, I've been calling, I'm so sorry, Save it, I snapped, voice cold. I'm only here for my stuff. Her face crumpled, eyes glistening, but I shoved past her, chest heaving, hands shaking with barely leashed rage. She followed me upstairs, voice wavering and broken as she begged and pleaded, stumbling through apologies and half-explanations that only left me feeling more hollow. I didn't mean for it to happen, she choked out, hands wringing. I was just, God, Jake, I was so lonely. I laughed, sharp and bitter. Yeah? You looked real lonely with his tongue down your throat. She flinched, tears streaking down her cheeks, but I couldn't stop the words, couldn't hold back the snarl in my voice, the raw, aching fury that burned every time I looked at her. I loved you, I bit out, voice cracking. I trusted you. I love you, she sobbed, voice cracking. I made a mistake, I know, but please, Jake, please don't do this. But I was already moving, shoving clothes into a bag, hands trembling, breath hitching with every ragged inhale. Because no matter how many times she said it, no matter how many tears stained her cheeks, I couldn't unsee the betrayal, couldn't unfeel the knife twisting in my gut. And as I stepped back into the hall, jaw clenched, chest burning, her voice cracked behind me, broken and raw and desperate. Jake, please, she sobbed. Please don't leave me. But I did. It's been 6 months since I walked out that door, her sobs echoing down the hallway, raw and splintered and desperate. 6 months of empty motel rooms and lawyer meetings and cold takeout dinners. Of tossing and turning on scratchy sheets, staring at stained ceilings, heart aching with the kind of hollow numbness that never really fades. Some days, I can almost convince myself it's getting better, that the ache in my chest isn't quite so sharp, that the memories don't twist the knife so deep. But then I see her face in my dreams, eyes wide and pleading, or catch the scent of vanilla perfume in a crowded grocery store, and it all comes rushing back, brutal and suffocating. She still calls sometimes, once a week at least, her name lighting up my phone, voice small and hesitant on the voicemails I can't bring myself to delete. They're all the same, I'm sorry, Jake. I love you. Please call me back. I never do. My lawyer's office is sterile and cold, the kind of place with gray carpet and beige walls and fake potted plants in every corner. The receptionist gives me a pitying smile when I walk in, and my chest tightens with a mix of shame and bitterness. Mr. Hayes will see you now, she says gently, and I nod, jaw clenched, hands fisting in my jacket pockets. Mr. Hayes, Mark, he insists I call him, greets me with a firm handshake and a somber smile, folders stacked neatly on the desk between us. His suit is charcoal gray, his tie a muted blue, the kind of man who looks like he's never had a hair out of place in his life. Jake, he says, settling back into his chair. Good to see you. How've you been holding up? I force a smile, the kind that doesn't reach my eyes. Better, I lie. He hums, eyes narrowing slightly, but doesn't push. Just flips open the top folder, shuffles through papers with deft fingers. We've finalized the settlement, he says, sliding a document across the desk. Your wife, Laura, has agreed to the terms. No alimony, the house goes to you. Assets split 50-50. Ex-wife, I correct automatically, the word bitter on my tongue. She signed? He nods. This morning. She asked me to tell you she's sorry. My laugh is sharp and hollow. Yeah, bet she is. The house feels different when I step inside, keys heavy in my hand, door creaking open to reveal the same old beige carpet and framed photos and faded curtains. It's quiet, too quiet, the kind that presses in on all sides, heavy and suffocating. The air smells faintly of lavender, her favorite candle, and my chest tightens, nails biting into my palms. I force myself to breathe, to move forward, feet dragging over the threshold. It's all still there, our wedding photo on the mantel, her favorite throw blanket draped over the couch, the half-burned candle on the coffee table. It's like she never left, like I'm stepping back in time, like I might turn the corner and find her curled up on the couch, legs tucked beneath her, book in her lap and a soft smile on her lips. But the house is empty. I walk upstairs on autopilot, breath shallow and unsteady, hand trailing the banister. The door to our bedroom is closed, just barely, and I hesitate for a heartbeat before pushing it open, chest aching. She's gone. The closet is half empty, her dresses and blouses stripped from the hangers, her perfumes cleared from the vanity, the bed made neatly for the first time in months. The only sign she was ever there is a single envelope on the nightstand, my name scrawled in her handwriting, loopy and slanted, ink smudged at the edges like she'd hesitated halfway through. My hands shake as I tear it open, breath catching painfully in my throat, eyes blurring at the edges. Jake! I don't even know how to start this. I've rewritten it a dozen times, and none of it seems right. None of it can fix what I did, or make you forgive me. But I have to try. I have to tell you I'm sorry, God, I'm so sorry. I never meant for this to happen. I never meant to hurt you. I was lonely and stupid and selfish, and I know that's no excuse, but it's the truth. I never stopped loving you, not for a second. I still do. I think I always will. I understand why you left, why you hate me, why you won't return my calls. I don't blame you. I wouldn't forgive me either. But if there's even a chance, if there's even a sliver of hope that you might, please, Jake. I love you. I love you more than anything, and I just want to come home. If this is really goodbye, then I understand. I won't call again, won't try to find you. But if you change your mind, if you ever want to talk, I'll be here. I'll wait. I'm so sorry. I love you. Laura. The paper crumples in my hands, and I sink onto the edge of the bed, head bowed, breath hitching painfully in my chest. The words blur together, ink smearing beneath my fingers, and I squeeze my eyes shut, jaw clenched so tight it aches. 2 weeks pass before I work up the nerve to call her. The phone rings twice before she answers, voice soft and breathless, like she's been crying. Jake, she whispers, barely audible. I close my eyes, throat tight. I got your letter. Oh, she breathes, voice breaking. I wasn't sure if you. I can't do this, I rasp, voice splintering. I can't. Every time I look at you, all I see is him. She chokes on a sob, breath shuddering down the line. Jake, please. You don't get to ask me for anything, I snap, voice sharp and bitter. You don't get to be the victim here. You did this. You chose this. Her breath catches, and I hear the way it crumbles, the way her voice cracks and shatters, soft apologies spilling like water, but they can't touch the wound she left, raw and festering. I know, she sobs, voice splintered. I know, I'm so sorry. I loved you, I whisper, voice cracking. I would have done anything for you. And you threw it away. I know, she chokes. I know, I hate myself for it. But I can't listen, not to the sobs, not to the apologies, not to the way her voice cracks and wavers, raw and broken. My hand shakes as I pull the phone away, thumb hovering over the button. Goodbye, Laura, I rasp. And then I hang up. The divorce is finalized a month later. I sign the papers with a numb sort of detachment, chest hollow and aching. The house stays quiet, empty, and cold. I box up the photos, the wedding album, the memories too raw to touch, and leave them in the attic to gather dust. I change the sheets, paint the walls, do everything I can to strip the place of her, but her ghost lingers in the silence. But some days, it hurts a little less. Some days, the hollow ache fades to a dull throb, and I can almost breathe without the weight of her betrayal crushing my chest. It's not much. But it's a start.